There are a lot of beautiful ways to celebrate summer in the kitchen and in your home, but the one that I think gets sort of pushed to the back burner, so to speak, is summer baking. And I get it, a hot oven on a hot day doesn't always sound great, but summer is filled with get-togethers and cookouts and family gatherings, and often I like to take something sweet to share with my friends and family. So today, I am going to celebrate summer with some baking and share some of my favorite sourdough discard dessert recipes. First up on the summer sourdough discard dessert menu is sourdough lemon bars. And I will say we liked all of these desserts, but the lemon bars may have actually been our favorite as a family. So what's really cool about these lemon bars is that the thickener for the lemon filling is the sourdough discard. So what's important to note about that then, for this discard recipe, you will need to use active sourdough starter. I have a full YouTube video about the difference between active sourdough starter, inactive, and discard. I'll link that in the description box below, but essentially, discard is just starter that you are taking out of the jar and putting somewhere else. And in this case, I'm putting it in lemon bars. So for the lemon bars, this is a shortbread sourdough cookie crust that I am just mixing in my stand mixer. This recipe will be on my blog soon, but while you wait for that, this is just a combination of about a stick of butter and a third of a cup of granulated sugar, and I am creaming them together in the stand mixer. And once the butter and the sugar is combined and nice and fluffy, I'm adding in about a quarter cup of sourdough discard, a little bit of vanilla extract, some salt, and all-purpose flour, just to make a really simple shortbread dough. What's nice about this is that dough only takes a minute or two to combine in the mixer. You definitely don't want to overmix it. And then you simply just put it in a parchment lined baking dish and just use your hands and mash it down into an even layer. And then I poked it with the fork just to prevent any big puffing up of the cookie crust. And then you pop it in the oven until the edges are just beginning to brown. For me, that took about 35 minutes. And while that's baking, I am getting the sourdough lemon filling prepared. So as I mentioned, what's really important about this recipe is you need active discard. So you can see as I'm pouring in the discard here in just a moment on the video, it's really thick and bubbly. One way you can tell the difference between active and inactive discard is the consistency and the texture. And this is really thick. You can see it's kind of gloopy and sticking together and has a lot of bubbles. Sourdough discard can be a little tricky to mix into the ingredients sometimes, so it definitely helps to work with the emulsifiers first. So in this case, I mix the eggs and the sugar together, and then I put the sourdough discard in because that egg just helps it combine a little bit better. What sets this recipe apart from others is that active starter that you use as the thickening agent and also the fresh lemons. A lot of lemon bar recipes and definitely like store-bought lemon bars use lemon extract, but this uses fresh lemon zest and fresh lemon juice, which makes for a really beautiful and light lemon flavor. Once everything is combined, I am just pouring it onto that cookie crust and putting it right into the oven. You can see it seems a little thin and watery. That's okay. Just make sure you get it right into the oven and it will start to firm up as it bakes. I baked the lemon bars at 325 for about 40 minutes until the center was just a tiny bit wobbly. It's okay if it jiggles a little bit, that'll firm up as it cools. Then I let these cool to room temperature and refrigerated them for about 2 hours, and they were so good. That thick cookie crust with the lightly sweetened bright lemon is so perfect for summer. You could definitely sprinkle these with powdered sugar, but we ate these as is and loved them. Next up on the sourdough discard dessert menu is Fudge Brownies, and these are a dark chocolate fudge brownie. These are one of my all-time favorite recipes. This will also be on my blog soon, so all of these I'll get up there as soon as I can. I post 2 blogs a week, so it will take a little time to get them on there. The easiest way to stay in touch is to head over to moonandmagnolia.com and sign up for the mailing list so you will get this recipe right to your inbox as soon as it is published. These are not a cake brownie. These are a thick, dense, fudgy brownie that I think are best served cold, but you could definitely warm them up. The part I don't like about these brownies is you have to wait for them to chill to really get the full flavor profile of them. So you do need to have a little patience, which is about impossible with brownies. First, I'm just making a dark chocolate butter. So I warmed up a little bit of butter. It doesn't need to be hot, just melt a stick of butter. And then I added in 1 cup of dark chocolate chips. Then in a bowl, I mixed together all of the dry ingredients. And once they are mixed together, I'm adding in that delicious chocolate butter. One thing that's nice about this recipe though is that you don't need active starter. In fact, I had some pretty old inactive starter in the fridge that I wanted to use up, and I like these with a little more sour flavor. So instead of using the rest of my active starter, I used up some leftover pretty darn inactive starter from the fridge, because the longer that starter sits there unfed, the more acidic and sour it will get. So if you want a more sour flavor, using an older discard will give you that. Now, if you want less sour, you can use a discard that is not quite as old. You can see this is a really thick batter. So it has some ingredients in it that absorb a lot of moisture, like of course flour, but also powdered cocoa, which creates a really thick batter that you kind of have to smooth over in the pan, but that's what makes them really fudgy and delicious. So unlike a lot of other brownie recipes, there's no leavener in this. There is a lower hydration, a lot of butter, and a lot of chocolate, and they get really fudgy. As you can see, those dark, dense spots are so good, but the key to really getting that fudgy-like consistency is to let them sit in the refrigerator until they are cold. One of the things I really hope to emphasize through all of my content, my blog and my YouTube channel, is that baking and cooking from scratch doesn't have to be complicated. I am making a sourdough peach cobbler, and I am using store-bought frozen peaches because it's the easiest way to deal with the peaches. You can definitely use fresh peaches, you can use canned peaches, but frozen peaches are a really easy way to do this. So I don't want you to ever feel like you can't bake things because you don't have time to peel peaches. Just use frozen ones. First, I'm getting the cobbler topping prepared. This is a combination of flour, sourdough discard, coconut oil, honey, some leavener, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, salt, heavy cream, and dark brown sugar. I'm mixing all that together and setting it aside. You could definitely long ferment this for more flavor, or if you have a gluten intolerance, if that is right for your dietary needs, you could long ferment it. If you're going to do that, I would just mix together the flour, starter, coconut oil, and honey, and then let it sit covered for about 8 to 12 hours. And then you can get back to the recipe, adding in the rest of the ingredients and finishing up your cobbler. Now I am getting the peach filling ready, and I do this right in my cast iron skillet so I don't have to dirty another dish. I have tested a lot with the right amount of peaches for this, and I found that 8 to 10 cups of peaches is about right. So if they're frozen, that means 8 to 10 cups of thawed peaches, or 8 to 10 cups of fresh or canned peaches. This is a really classic peach cobbler filling, so it's a combination of course, peaches, cinnamon, flour, butter, and dark brown sugar. And it's also really forgiving. So if you want a little bit sweeter, throw in a little more dark brown sugar. If you like a little bit thicker and gooier, add a little more flour. Really, you kind of can't go wrong here. And I'm putting this in the oven just until that butter melts, and then when it comes out of the oven, it's about 5 or 10 minutes, stirring all those delicious gooey ingredients together. Now, a classic cobbler requires you to roll out the dough and cut it like biscuits and lay them on top. I like to skip that part and make this as a crumble topping because it's a lot easier. If you are busy, if you have a million things going on and you can't even fathom rolling out a bunch of dough and cutting it for a cobbler, you don't have to. This is so good. You just bake it in the oven until it is brown on top. I think mine took about 35 to 40 minutes, and then serve it with a little bit of vanilla ice cream. And that is basically summer in one delicious and beautiful bowl. This recipe actually is on my blog and ready for you to print and enjoy. So you can head over to moonandmagnolia.com and snag it there. Last up for the sourdough discard dessert recipes is a chocolate chip skillet cookie. You can use any chocolate chip cookie recipe you want for this. It is so easy because you just make your cookie batter and put it in a skillet, and you're just making one giant cookie. Every starter or sourdough discard recipe calls for, of course, a different amount of starter, and that can actually be adjusted depending on how much starter you have and want to use and how you want it to taste. But for this particular recipe, I'm only using a 1/4 cup, which is really helpful for those of you who don't keep a lot of discard around. So if you just have a little bit of starter that you keep on hand and you're only discarding just a small amount with each feeding, this is a really good recipe for you. So I'm simply just mixing together the dry ingredients and then of course mixing in the wet ingredients and dark chocolate chips. I use dark chocolate for everything because I love it, but you can use whatever chocolate chip you prefer. The trick to baking in cast iron is to make sure it is well seasoned. I'll leave a few links in the description box below for my tips and tricks for caring for cast iron, so that way you can bake without things sticking. But even though I have really well seasoned cast iron, when I bake, I still put a little avocado oil, or in this case some butter, on the skillet, so that way it definitely doesn't stick and it crisps up the edges. While the cookie was still hot out of the oven, I topped it with some coarse salt and a scoop of homemade ice cream, and it was so good. Don't forget, all these recipes will be available at moonandmagnolia.com, so you can check them out there. Be sure to sign up for the mailing list so you can get them right to your inbox. I hope you're off to a beautiful summer. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I'll see you again next time.